Girl, pull up a seat. No, for real. Get comfortable. Pour yourself something strong because the tea I am about to pour is so piping hot. It's going to scorch the mahogany off this table. You know how they say blood is thicker than water? Well, let me tell you, sometimes that blood is just thick with poison, envy, and straight up treachery. Today we are talking about a story of betrayal so deep, so trifling, it would make Judas himself take notes. This is the story of Imani. And honey, when I tell you this woman was a queen, I mean a self-made, crown on her head, running the whole damn world kind of queen. She wasn't born with a silver spoon. She forged that spoon herself out of pure, unadulterated grit and brilliance. Then she dipped it in 24-karat gold just because she could. Imani built a luxury skincare empire from the ground up. I'm talking about nights she spent sleeping on the floor of her tiny studio apartment because her bed was covered in beakers, mixing bowls, and pH strips. And I remember her telling me about the time she almost burned her eyebrows off trying to perfect a stable vitamin C serum, working from a chemistry textbook she borrowed from the library because she couldn't afford to buy it. The air in her apartment smelled like a strange mix of burnt sugar, lavender, and ozone. She started with formulas she was mixing in her own kitchen using botanicals from her grandma's garden in Georgia and turned it into a global brand, Elysian Glow, that was in every Sephora, every Neiman Marcus, every high-end department store from here to Dubai. Women swore by her products like it was the gospel. Her flagship product, the Phoenix Nectar, was a serum so potent, so transformative, it had a 6-month waiting list. Imani was the kind of woman who dripped success. We're talking custom-tailored Chanel suits for the boardroom that fit her like a second skin and effortless, backless silk gowns for the galas she was always attending or hosting. Her penthouse apartment, child, it wasn't just an apartment. It was a palace in the sky with a view of the entire city skyline that could make you weep. Floor-to-ceiling windows, white marble floors, a sunken living room with a fireplace that floated in the middle of the room. Her closet was the size of my first apartment, organized by color and designer, and it was lined with shoes with those signature red bottoms for days. But here's the thing about Imani. For all her wealth, for all her power, her heart was softer than a cashmere blanket. She was generous to a fault, a check writer for anybody with a sob story, especially when it came to her family. And that, my dear, is where the trouble always, always starts. Her family, the inner circle she thought was her fortress, consisted of just 2 people, her husband David and her younger sister Maya. Let's dissect this situation, starting with David. He was her college sweetheart, the kind of man who looks perfect on paper. Tall, devastatingly charming, with a smile that could talk a cat down from a tree and convince a nun to give him her rosary. They met when Imani was still dreaming, and he was just there. On the surface, they were the ultimate power couple. But let's be real. While Imani was a rocket ship blasting into the stratosphere, David was the launch pad necessary at the beginning for support, but mostly just left behind on the ground, shrouded in smoke, watching her soar. He had a respectable job in finance, managing mid-level portfolios at a downtown firm. It was a good job. But his entire annual salary was what Imani probably spent on champagne and charity donations in a month. She never ever made him feel small. She'd build him up, call him her rock, her king. But you could see it in his eyes sometimes, that little flicker of bitter resentment when someone at a party would call him Mr. Imani. He loved the lifestyle her money provided. Oh yes, he loved that part. The Italian sports cars, the vacations in Monaco, the tailored suits she'd have flown in from Savile Row. But I don't think he loved the woman who provided it nearly as much. And then there was Maya. Oh, Maya, the younger sister. the one who had always lived in the colossal, suffocating shadow of her brilliant, beautiful, successful older sister. Imani loved Maya with a fierce, almost blind devotion. She'd paid for her college, paid the exorbitant rent on her trendy downtown loft apartment, and gave her a director of social media job at Elysian Glow. That was really just a fancy title so she could slip her a six-figure salary to post pretty pictures on Instagram. Maya was always there, a permanent plus one, smiling for the cameras on the red carpet next to Imani, but the smile never, ever reached her eyes. It was the kind of tight, stretched smile that was hiding a whole lot of why her and not me. You could practically smell the jealousy seeping out of her pores. Imani would buy a new Porsche, and Maya would say something like, "Oh, another one. It must be so nice not to have to worry about a single thing in the world." It was always coated in sugar, but chili, the bitterness underneath, could curdle milk. She wore Imani's hand-me-down designer bags, the ones Imani had only worn once, but she wore them with an air of entitlement, not gratitude. She and David, they were two peas in a pot of resentment. They found a quiet, ugly little corner where their inadequacies could meet and fester. I saw it myself once. Imani was hosting a dinner party. She'd just been featured on the cover of Forbes. Everyone was congratulating her, and she was glowing. David tried to tell some story about a minor win at his firm, but no one was really listening. Their attention was all on Imani, and I saw him, over by the bar, catching Maya's eye. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of his head, a look of pure, shared suffering passing between them. It was a silent conversation that said everything. They were a two-headed snake, a pit of vipers and Gucci loafers, just waiting for a victim to fall in. And one rainy Tuesday night, they got one. Imani was driving home from a late-night board meeting. She was in her Mercedes, the leather still smelling new, the rain-making shimmering jewels of the city lights on her windshield. She was on the phone with her head of operations, hands-free, of course. This woman did everything by the book. They were celebrating landing a massive, game-changing contract that would put Elysian Glow in every hotel in the Four Seasons franchise. She was on top of the world, untouchable. A song she loved came on the radio, something soulful and smooth. She hung up the phone, a wide, satisfied smile on her face, humming along as the city blurred past her window. She was thinking about the celebratory trip to Tuscany she was going to plan for her and David. And that's when it happened. A 16-wheeler truck, the driver asleep at the wheel, ran a red light. The world dissolved into a cacophony of horror. The sound of screeching tires, a horn blaring for a split second that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then the horrific, deafening crunch of metal folding in on itself like a cheap tin can. The world shattered into a million pieces of glittering, terrifying glass before everything. Everything just went black. The next thing Imani knew was nothing. For 6 long months, she was lost in a dark, silent, dreamless ocean, a coma. The doctors at the best hospital her money could buy told David and Maya it was bad. A severe traumatic brain injury. They used phrases like diffuse axonal injury and low probability of meaningful recovery. They didn't know if she would ever wake up, and if she did, they had no idea who or what she would be. But Imani was a fighter. She had fought her way out of poverty, fought her way to the top of a cutthroat business world. And now, in the silent darkness, she was fighting her way back to the light. Slowly, painstakingly, consciousness began to trickle back in. It started with sounds, the steady rhythmic beep of a heart monitor, a sound that would become the metronome of her rage, the distant muffled murmur of voices. Then the sterile antiseptic smell of the hospital, a smell she would forever associate with betrayal. Her body felt impossibly heavy, like it was filled with wet sand. One afternoon, a sliver of light pierced the darkness. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy as lead curtains. Then, with a will of their own, they opened. The world was a blurry, painful mess of white ceilings and pale green walls. She saw two figures standing by the window, their backs to her, silhouetted against the gray afternoon light. She knew them instantly, even through the fog. David. Maya. A wave of profound relief washed over her, so powerful it was almost painful. They're here. They've been here. I'm safe. Her throat felt like a desert, lined with sandpaper from the breathing tube that had only recently been removed. She tried to call out to them, to whisper her husband's name, but only a faint, raspy croak came out. It was barely a sound, but it was enough. They turned around, but the expression on their faces wasn't the joyous shock of seeing a loved one wake up from the dead. It wasn't relief. It was annoyance, impatience, like she had just interrupted a very important private conversation. And that's when she saw it, and the detail that cut through the fog in her brain like a razor. Maya was wearing a diamond necklace, not just any diamond necklace. It was the one David had given Imani for their 5th wedding anniversary. A one-of-a-kind piece from Cartier's high jewelry collection, a cascade of flawless diamonds she had worn to the Met Gala. It was her necklace, in David's hand. It was resting on the small of Maya's back, his thumb rubbing slow, possessive circles, a gesture so intimate, so familiar, so his. It sent a bolt of pure ice shooting through Imani's veins. They hadn't fully registered that she was awake yet. Their eyes were on each other, and they were still talking in low, conspiratorial voices. "The board meeting is tomorrow," David said, his voice tense, stripped of all its usual charm. "We need to finalize the transfer of the CEO position. They're getting antsy about leadership. The stock is starting to dip." Maya sighed, a dramatic, put-upon sound that made Imani's skin crawl. I know. I've been handling it. I told them with Imani's condition, it's the only logical step for the stability of the company. I've already got the power of attorney Marcus drew up when you were appointed her legal guardian." Imani's heart stopped. Marcus Thorne was her lawyer, a man who was practically her uncle. Why would he? No. They must have lied to him. They must have convinced him. David reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Maya's ear, a gesture he used to do to Imani when she was tired after a long day. "You're doing amazing, baby. You're a natural at this. She built the empire, but we're the ones who get to enjoy it. It's almost like she did all the hard work just for us." Maya let out a little laugh, a sound so full of cruel, triumphant satisfaction it made Imani's stomach churn with acid. Well, someone had to run things, and the doctor said even if she wakes up, she'll never be the same. They used the words persistent vegetative state. We're just managing her affairs. She finally glanced over at Imani's still body in the bed, and there was a flicker of something ugly and dismissive in her eyes. It's what she would have wanted, for us to be happy. In that single, horrifying moment lying there, paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak, Imani felt a cold, hard, diamond-like clarity settle over her. The grief, the confusion, the fear, it all evaporated, consumed by a fire. A rage so pure and so potent, it burned away all the weakness, all the pain. They thought she was gone. They were dancing on her grave before she was even in it. They were stealing her life, her love, her legacy, and justifying it with sickeningly sweet lies. "Okay," she thought, the words forming perfectly, crisply in her mind, even if her lips couldn't speak them. "Okay. You want me to be brain damaged? You want me to be a ghost in my own life? Fine. Let's play a game. And I promise you, it's a game you're going to lose." Her eyes, which had been open, fluttered shut again, just as Maya turned to look at her more closely. When the nurse came in a few minutes later, bustling with professional cheer, and found her patient's eyes open, Imani looked at her. She looked at David and Maya as they rushed to her bedside, their faces now masks of performative shock and joy. She looked at them as if they were complete strangers. She didn't speak. She just stared, her eyes wide, vacant and utterly, terrifyingly blank. The doctors were amazed she was awake, but saddened by her apparent state. Severe amnesia, they diagnosed. After a battery of tests, she intentionally failed. Significant cognitive impairment. They used words like childlike and unresponsive to emotional stimuli. David and Maya put on a masterful performance for the world. They cried tears of crocodile grief. Our poor Imani, Maya would weep to the nurses and the reporters who started sniffing around. She's gone. The woman we knew, the brilliant mind, it's gone. David would hold her hand, his face a perfect mask of sorrow, and say, "We'll take care of her, whatever it takes, for the rest of her life." They took her home to her penthouse. Only it wasn't her penthouse anymore. It was a mausoleum of the life she once had. Her beloved collection of modern art, the Basquiat, the Rothko, was gone, replaced with generic, soulless hotel prints. Her home office, her sanctuary of creation and power, had been turned into a gaudy media room with a giant TV and a plush velvet couch where they no doubt entertained their friends. And Maya's clothes, her cheap fast fashion knockoffs, and even more insultingly, some of Imani's own couture pieces were hanging in her closet, crammed right next to David's suits. They had moved into her master bedroom, the one with the panoramic views and the custom bed. They put Imani in a guest room at the far end of the hall. A nice room, to be sure, with a view of a neighboring building. But it was a cage, a beautifully decorated, gilded cage. They hired a full-time nurse, a woman named Brenda, to watch her, to feed her, to bathe her, to wheel her around. They treated her like a porcelain doll, an object in her own home. They'd coo at her in that disgusting baby talk. "You want some more applesauce, Imani? Is that yummy for you?" they'd ask, while they uncorked a bottle of her finest vintage Chateau Margaux and planned vacations to Bali on her dime. They'd talk about her and her money right in front of her, as if she were a piece of furniture. The accountants from the firm are asking questions about the withdrawals from the corporate accounts, David would say to Maya in the kitchen, while Imani sat in a wheelchair in the living room, staring blankly at a cartoon on the television, her ears burning. "Just tell them it's for her ongoing and experimental medical care," Maya would reply, not even bothering to lower her voice. "Private jets to exclusive Swiss clinics don't pay for themselves, you know." And they would laugh, a smug, ugly sound that echoed in the high-ceilinged rooms. Every condescending word, every stolen dollar, every shared kiss they thought she didn't understand, it was all fuel. She absorbed it all, letting the rage build not into a hot, messy fire, but into a diamond-hard, ice-cold core inside of her. She played her part perfectly. The vacant stares, the mumbled nonsensical words she'd practiced, the occasional trail of drool she'd let slip from the corner of her mouth just to sell the performance. They bought it hook, line, and sinker. They were so blinded by their own greed and arrogance, they couldn't see the calculating, brilliant mind working tirelessly behind those empty eyes. Her body was healing faster than her mind was pretending to. The physical therapist who came 3 times a week was amazed at her progress. She could walk, slowly at first with a walker, but with growing strength and stability. They chalked it up to muscle memory. Imani let them. In the dead of night, when the apartment was still and silent, she would practice. Pushing through the pain, she did squats, lunges, yoga poses she knew by heart, rebuilding her strength in silence, her muscles screaming, fueled by pure hatred. She knew she couldn't do this alone. She needed an ally. She needed Marcus. But how? Her every move was monitored. The nurse Brenda was kind but firm. She was paid handsomely by Maya and David, and her loyalty was to them. Imani had to get creative. An opportunity presented itself one afternoon. Brenda was a fiend for her phone, always scrolling through social media. While she was preparing Imani's pureed lunch, Imani, with a great show of clumsy, uncoordinated effort, reached for a glass of water on the table. Her hand spasmed, and she knocked the full glass directly onto Brenda's brand new iPhone, which was lying right beside it. Brenda gasped, "Oh my goodness, my phone!" She snatched it up, frantically trying to wipe it dry on her scrubs, but it was too late. The screen flickered and died. Imani just looked at the puddle of water with her signature wide-eyed confusion. "Whoa," she mumbled, pointing. Brenda, flustered and visibly upset, sighed. "It's okay, Imani. It wasn't your fault." She had to go to the staff room to try and find a bag of rice, complaining about losing all her pictures. She was gone for a full 15 minutes. It was the first time Imani had been completely alone and unmonitored since she'd come home. She moved with a speed and precision that would have shocked them all. She hobbled, making it look like a painful struggle, to the hall closet where they kept old electronics and junk. Tucked away in the back of a box of old cords and chargers was a burner phone she had bought for an international trip years ago and completely forgotten about. She grabbed it, along with a compatible charger, and shoved them deep into the pocket of her plush robe. When Brenda came back, sighing that her phone was a goner, Imani was sitting exactly where she had left her, staring placidly at the wall. That night she waited. She waited until the whole apartment was silent, until she heard the telltale click of the door to her old master bedroom, closing, followed by the faint, sickening sound of Maya's high-pitched laughter. She waited another hour, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs just to be sure. Then she crept out of bed, her movements as silent as a cat's. She plugged the phone in behind her nightstand, hidden from view by a stack of books they'd placed there for decoration. It took an agonizingly long time to power up, but finally the screen lit up with a welcome glow. Her fingers, still a little stiff but surprisingly steady, trembled as she punched in the number. She knew it by heart. Marcus Thorne, her father's lawyer and now hers. A man who had known her since she was a little girl with scraped knees, a man whose belief in her had never once wavered. He answered on the second ring, his voice thick and groggy with sleep. "Thorne." Imani kept her voice to a whisper so quiet it was barely a breath, her mouth pressed against the phone. "Marcus, it's me. It's Imani." There was a dead, stunned silence on the other end of the line. She could hear him sitting up in bed, the rustle of sheets. Then, Imani, my God, is this a joke? They said you couldn't speak, that your cognitive function was... They say a lot of things, Marcus. Most of them are lies. The words felt incredible, like a cool drink of water after years in the desert. "I need your help. They're stealing everything. My company, my money, my life." You could hear the shift in his voice, the sleepiness vaporized, replaced by a sharp, cold alarm that was all business. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm in my home, but it's not my home anymore. I'm a prisoner, Marcus. They think I'm brain damaged. They think I have amnesia. I need you to let them keep thinking that. I need you to play along. But I need you to fight for me. Secretly." There was no hesitation. "Anything, Imani. Anything. Tell me what to do." And so the real game began. The War Council had its first member. A few days later, Marcus came to the penthouse under the guise of reviewing Imani's living trust and care provisions. Maya and David were all smiles and false sincerity, playing the part of devoted, burdened caretakers. "As you can see, Marcus," Maya said, gesturing around the apartment with a proprietary air. We're making sure she has the very best of everything. Her comfort is our top priority. Marcus played his part to perfection. He looked at Imani with practiced pity and sadness. She seems comfortable. While David was distracted, pouring him a coffee, and Maya was fluffing a pillow behind Imani's head for show, Marcus leaned in close as if to check on her well-being. Under the cover of this fake concern, his hand brushed against her lap and he slipped a tiny, state-of-the-art encrypted laptop, no bigger than a paperback book, under the cashmere blanket that covered her legs. "It's secure," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear, his voice so low only she could hear. "Everything you need is on there. The passwords are in the battery compartment. Be careful." Imani just blinked at him, her face a perfect, heartbreaking mask of incomprehension. She even let out a little nonsensical hum. The nights became her war room, while the nurse dozed in a chair outside her door, and her husband and sister slept soundly in her bed. In her room, down the hall from her, Imani was wide awake. The faint glow of the laptop screen illuminated her face, no longer vacant but sharp, focused, and utterly rootless. She was a general plotting her campaign. With Marcus's legal and technical assistance, she gained backdoor access to her own financial universe, and what she found made her blood run cold, then hot with fury. It was worse than she imagined. They had been systematically draining her fortune with the voraciousness of parasites. Millions of dollars funneled into a labyrinth of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands under a shell corporation brazenly named MD Enterprises. Maya and David, the sheer, unmitigated audacity. They had sold off huge chunks of her stock portfolio in Elysian Glow, liquidated assets, and were in the process of mortgaging her properties to the hilt. She downloaded every transaction, every wire transfer, every forged signature, her own name scrawled in a clumsy imitation by David's hand. The receipts were piling up into a mountain of digital evidence. But she needed more. She needed their voices. She needed to hear it from their own mouths, in their own treacherous words. Marcus arranged for a tech upgrade to the penthouse's security system. The technicians who came in were his private investigators. They installed microscopic listening devices and pinhole cameras in the main living areas, the living room, the kitchen, the study she was no longer allowed in. All of it was routed to a secure server controlled by Imani from her secret laptop. In Chile, the things she heard, the recordings were a goldmine of pure, unadulterated evil. She listened to them mock her. "Did you see her face when I fed her the pureed carrots today?" Maya would say, shrieking with laughter as she recounted the story to David over dinner. "Like a big dumb baby. Just sat there with her mouth open." She listened to them plot the final heist. "The board is pushing for a full sale of Elysian Glow," David said one evening, swirling a glass of her 20-year-old Macallan Scotch. "I think we should do it. Let some private equity firm take it over. We cash out, take the $100+ million, and move to Monaco. We can set up a trust that'll pay for her nurse for the rest of her life. It's the responsible thing to do. We'll look like saints." "Monaco," Maya breathed, her voice filled with a disgusting, naked avarice. "I've always wanted to live in Monaco. I can finally get a real Birkin, not just her old ones." Each recording was another nail in their coffin, and Imani hammered it in with cold, silent, satisfying precision. She saved every file, backed it up to the secure cloud server that Marcus controlled, and waited. She was a patient predator, a lioness in the grass, watching her prey grow fat, lazy, and complacent. The final perfect opportunity came gift wrap tied with a silk ribbon from Maya herself. Flush with her new status as the acting CEO and de facto queen of Imani's empire, Maya decided to throw a massive charity gala, the inaugural Elysian Glow Gala for Traumatic Brain Injury Awareness. The hypocrisy was so staggering, so utterly shameless. Imani almost laughed out loud when she overheard them planning it on the hidden cameras. It was going to be the society event of the season. Maya was positioning herself as a philanthropist, a saint, a devoted sister nobly bearing the cross of caring for her tragically afflicted sibling. The entire gala was in honor of Imani. "It will be so moving," Maya gushed to David one night, the hidden camera in the living room capturing her every smug, self-satisfied expression as she practiced her speech in the mirror. "I'll give a speech about Imani's bravery, our family struggle. We'll raise millions for the foundation. It will be amazing for my public image." "Oh, it's going to be amazing, all right," Imani thought from her room, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face in the darkness. "You have no earthly idea." This was it, the stage, the audience, the perfect public venue for the curtain to fall on their disgusting little play. She got a message to Marcus through their secure channel. The gala. That's the night. The plan was set in motion with military precision. The week before the gala, Imani started to regress. She became more withdrawn, more childlike. She refused to walk, forcing Brenda to use the wheelchair exclusively. She barely ate. Maya and David were secretly thrilled. It solidified their story. On the night of the gala, they told the nurse Brenda that they had hired a special second caregiver to stay with Imani, so Brenda could have a well-deserved night off. The new caregiver, of course, was one of Marcus's people, a sharp-eyed woman named Saray. The moment Maya and David left for the gala, swathed in designer clothes and dripping with Imani's own diamonds, Operation Payback began. Maya was in a custom Vera Wang, David in a Tom Ford tux. They looked like royalty. They had no idea they were walking to their own execution. As soon as their car pulled away, the caregiver, Sarah, opened the penthouse door. It wasn't just a caregiver, it was a full team. A celebrity hairstylist, a renowned makeup artist, and a stylist Imani had worked with for years. They descended on the penthouse like a Formula One pit crew. For 2 hours, they worked, transforming Imani from a pale, neglected patient into the undisputed queen she had always been. Her hair was styled into a sleek, powerful chignon at the nape of her neck. Her makeup was flawless, a smoky eye that highlighted the unholy fire in her gaze, and a bold, blood-red lip that screamed power and vengeance. And the dress. No, the dress. Marcus had it custom made for her by her favorite designer, a man she'd helped launch. It was a floor-length gown of liquid emerald green silk that hugged her every curve. Her now strong, toned body a testament to her secret nightly workouts. The color of money, of envy, of rebirth. On her, it looked like armor. When she finally looked in the full-length mirror, she didn't see a victim. She saw a warrior. She was ready for battle. Marcus arrived at 8:30 p.m. sharp, looking dapper and dangerous in a tuxedo, a grimly determined look on his face. He held out his arm for her. "Ready to make an entrance, Your Majesty?" Imani took his arm, her brand-new Louboutin heels, the first thing she'd bought herself, clicking softly on the marble floor. "They won't know what hit them," she said, her voice steady, clear, and cold as ice. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a spectacle of obscene luxury, all paid for with Imani's money. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Tables were laden with towering arrangements of white orchids and endless flutes of champagne. The city's elite were all there, dressed to the nines, air-kissing and murmuring about Maya's incredible bravery and devotion. A huge, soft-focus, ethereal portrait of Imani from years ago hung over the stage, making her look like a beautiful, tragic angel. And at the center of it all was Maya, holding court, looking like the cat who got the cream, the canary, and the whole damn bird cage. She was wearing a frothy white ball gown like a bride and had the audacity to wear a diamond tiara nestled in her hair. A tiara, a nerve. David was by her side, his hand possessively on her waist, looking every bit the lord of the manor. They were in the middle of a fawning interview with a society blogger when the great gilded doors to the ballroom swung open with a dramatic flourish. And in walked Imani. A hush fell over the room. It started at the back and rolled forward like a physical wave, a tidal wave of silence and pure shock. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Conversations died in mid-sentence. Every single head in the cavernous room turned to the entrance. There she stood, not the broken, brain-damaged woman from the whispers and pitying articles, not the childlike creature from Maya's tearful stories, but a goddess, a vision in emerald green, radiating a power and an icy, terrifying calm that sucked the air out of the room. She looked magnificent, and she looked completely, utterly, dangerously healed. Maya's face, honey, you should have seen it. Her jaw went slack. The smug color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking like a ghastly ghost in a ridiculously expensive tiara. The champagne flute she was holding slipped from her nerveless fingers and shattered on the floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the dead silence. David froze, his charming smile melting into a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, and in a way, he had. The ghost of the woman he thought he'd successfully buried. Imani didn't look at anyone else. Her eyes were locked on her sister and her husband across the room. She started to walk, Marcus by her side, her protector, her witness, her avenging angel. The crowd of millionaires and socialites parted for her like the Red Sea. The only sound in the entire ballroom was the sharp, rhythmic click-clack of her heels on the polished floor, a drumbeat counting down to their doom. Maya finally snapped out of her shock, rushing forward, her face a chaotic mess of fake concern. Imani, oh my God, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be out of bed. You're not well. Someone help her, she's confused. She reached for Imani's arm, trying to play the part of the caring sister one last desperate time. Imani stopped. She looked down at her sister's manicured hand on her arm, then back up at her face, and for the first time in 6 agonizing months, she spoke to her. Her voice wasn't a mumble. It wasn't a whisper. It was cold and sharp as a shard of glass. "Get your hands off me," she said. Maya recoiled as if she'd been slapped. Imani walked right past her, past David, who was standing there like a statue made of salt, and straight up the steps to the stage. She walked to the podium, gently moving aside the flustered, confused MC, and took the microphone. The whole room held its breath, a collective, silent inhale. She looked out at the sea of shocked, gaping faces, then her gaze landed back on Maya and David, who were standing frozen in the middle of the room, the spotlight of 1,000 stares burning them alive. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice ringing out, clear and strong and resonant, through the silent ballroom. "I'm so glad you could all make it. My sister Maya told you this night was in my honor, and for once in her life she was telling the truth. It is." A nervous, uncertain titter went through the crowd. "I want to thank you all for your donations, for your concern. For the last 6 months, while I was away, I understand I was the subject of much discussion. The tragic story of the fallen CEO so lovingly cared for by her devoted sister and her adoring husband. She paused, letting the words hang in the air, thick with sarcasm. It's a beautiful story, a fairy tale. The only problem is, it's a lie. A collective gasp, a ripple of scandalized sound went through the room. Maya started shaking her head frantically, whispering, "No, no, no!" For 6 months, Imani continued, her voice gaining strength, each word a hammer blow, I have not been lovingly cared for. I have been a prisoner in my own home. I have been treated like an infant, spoken to like a dog, and systematically robbed blind by the two people I trusted most in the entire world. She gestured to the giant screen behind her, the one that had been showing the loop of her ethereal portrait. Roll the first exhibit, Marcus. The angelic portrait of Imani vanished, replaced by a bank statement, then another and another. Bright red arrows highlighted massive transfers of funds, millions and millions of dollars flowing from Imani's corporate and personal accounts into a shadowy offshore entity. MD Enterprises. MD, Imani said, her voice dripping with contempt. I wonder what that could stand for. Maya and David, perhaps? While they were telling the world they were spending a fortune on my care, they were actually funding a new life for themselves with my money. A life of luxury built on a foundation of lies and my life's work. The room was in an uproar. People were pointing, whispering, pulling out their phones to record. Maya looked like she was about to faint. David was as white as a sheet, sweating through his Tom Ford suit. But stealing my money wasn't enough, Imani said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level that commanded even more attention. They also had to steal my voice, my mind, my dignity. They told the world, they told my friends, my colleagues, my board of directors that I had permanent severe brain damage, that I would never recover. She looked directly at Maya, whose face was now streaked with mascara. My sister, the new acting CEO of my company, has been giving very moving speeches about the struggles of living with a brain-injured loved one. Let's hear one of those touching moments now, shall we? The screen changed again, but this time it was black, and a voice filled the room, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system. Maya's voice. It was an audio recording from the hidden microphones in the penthouse. Did you see her face when I fed her the pureed carrots today, like a big dumb baby? The sound of Maya and David's cruel shared laughter echoed through the grand ballroom. The crowd gasped in unison, a sound of pure horror. A prominent society columnist sitting at the front table literally dropped her jaw. Maya let out a strangled sob, covering her face with her hands. And what about the future of my company? Imani asked the silent room. The one I spent my life building from the dirt? Let's hear what my loving husband had planned for it. David's voice now, smooth, confident, and utterly damning. The board is pushing for a full sale of Elysian Glow. I think we should do it. Cash out, take the money, and move to Monaco. Leave her here with the nurse. It's the responsible thing to do. Then Maya's voice, practically purring with greed. Monaco. I've always wanted to live in Monaco. The evidence was absolute. It was undeniable. It was a public execution by PowerPoint. Imani let the silence stretch for a long, painful moment, letting the full weight of their treachery sink into every corner of the room. She then delivered the final, devastating blow. You wanted to honor me, Maya? She said, her voice soft again but laced with pure steel. You wanted to raise awareness for traumatic brain injuries. Well, consider it raised, along with awareness for felony fraud, grand larceny, embezzlement, conspiracy, and the particular kind of evil that allows you to betray your own flesh and blood for a bigger apartment and a gaudy tiara. She leaned into the microphone, a predator enjoying the last moment before the kill. The devil works hard. But a woman scorned with 6 months to plan and a very good lawyer on speed dial? Honey, she works harder. As if on cue, the main doors of the ballroom opened again. This time, it wasn't a queen in a green dress. It was 4 uniformed police officers and 2 plainclothes detectives. They moved through the stunned crowd with a quiet, unhurried purpose, their eyes fixed on Maya and David. Marcus, standing near the stage, gave the lead detective a subtle nod. The officers reached the disgraced couple. Maya Chastain, David Miller, the lead officer said, his voice booming in the preternaturally quiet room. You're under arrest on suspicion of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Maya screamed, a raw animal sound of pure despair, as the cold steel of handcuffs snapped around her wrists, snagging the delicate fabric of her white gown. David just crumpled, all the charm and arrogance gone, leaving only a pathetic, defeated man who couldn't even meet his wife's eyes. The flashbulbs of 100 cell phones went off at once, a chaotic storm of light capturing their walk of shame as they were led out of the ballroom, out of the life they had stolen, and into the one they had so richly earned. Imani stood on the stage, watching them go. A single perfect tear of pure, unadulterated vindication traced a path through her flawless makeup. She had done it. She had taken back her name, her company, her life. She had risen from her own ashes. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. A media firestorm of epic proportions. The story of the coma queen and her triumphant, vengeful return was everywhere. The tale of the treacherous sister and the greedy husband became a legend of high society scandal. They were tried, convicted in record time thanks to the mountain of evidence, and sentenced to a long, long time in a place with no Chanel, no tiaras, and definitely no champagne. Imani, with Marcus's unwavering help, cleaned house. She undid every fraudulent transaction. She reclaimed her company, firing every single person who had been complicit in promoting those who had remained loyal and questioned the narrative. The board, humbled and horrified, gave her their unconditional support. Elysian glow, under its rightful leader, soared to even greater, more stratospheric heights. She sold the penthouse. Too many ghosts, too many bad memories. She bought a breathtaking estate on a cliff overlooking the ocean in Big Sur, a place filled with light and air and the sound of crashing waves. She didn't just survive, she thrived, she glowed up. She started a new foundation, one she actually believed in, helping women escape abusive situations by providing legal and financial support. She turned her pain into power, her scars into strength. About a year later, a picture of her surfaced online, posted by a friend. She was on a yacht off the coast of Italy, her face turned to the sun, a genuine, unburdened laugh on her face. She was surrounded by real friends, people who celebrated her, not what she could do for them. She looked happy. She looked powerful. She looked free. And that, my dear, is what happens when you try to bury a queen. You forget that she's a seed. You forget that with a little bit of darkness and a whole lot of dirt, she will rise again, stronger and more glorious than you could ever imagine. They tried to write her ending, but they didn't realize that Imani was the one holding the pen the entire time. Now, who needs a refill? This tea was good, but the next pot is even better.